Feels so important up here. Welcome, little people. Just kidding. Our first new member today is Winifred Kane with ACA Women's Foundation. Come on up, Winnie. Let me tell you a little bit about her foundation. It was founded in 2001 with the purpose to empower a minority group of ACA girls and women in northern Thailand, and to give them the tools to succeed. She is currently looking for like-minded people with a passion to help those who are oppressed or prejudiced as either board members or volunteers to travel to Thailand to help teach a vocation or English. Thank you, Winnie, and welcome. Erin Jeffs with Transamerica Financial. Come on up, Erin. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He's an entrepreneur and previous business owner for over a decade. He is currently licensed life insurance agent for World Financial Group, and his goals are to educate clients on many different financial service products and to help families and individuals realize the importance of life insurance and retirement programs. Cafe Sabor, Rory Larson, I don't think they made it. They're right in the middle of lunch rush. But Cafe Sabor is one of the newest restaurants in St. George. They have the highest quality of food in a fun and exciting atmosphere, including fajitas, quesadillas, seafood, and on Mondays, kids eat free. Ooh, right? Do they have to be your own kids? I'll have to ask. All right, Shelley Smith with Expo STG. Come on up, Shelley. Shelley Smith has been with the What Women Want Expo event. Oh, she's doing her Miss America wave. Very nice, Shelley. She has been the What Women Want Expo event coordinator for the past 7 expos, and she's recently ventured out on her own and will be hosting a spring-fall best expo ever. She wants to bring more of our community to the expo, allowing you an opportunity to connect with shoppers face-to-face. The best expo ever will be held on March 16th and 17th at the Dixie Center. Thank you, Shelley. Illume Gallery of Fine Art, Jane. Welcome, Jane. And Wayne, come on up. Yes, Wyatt, sorry, Wyatt. I was close with the W. Illume Gallery of Fine Art specializes in museum-quality works of art from a stable of nationally known painters and sculptors. Their gallery is to inspire and illuminate the soul. They currently have Oil Painters of America Western Regional Show going on from now until December 9th. And several artists include Doug Braithwaite, Annette Everett, Catherine Statz, and many more. Visit them at 29 West, 200 North. Thank you. KB Oil, Stacy Bettridge, I don't believe is here, but let me tell you quickly about them. They are one of the fastest growing bulk fuel and lubricant marketer and distributors in Utah, with businesses throughout southern Utah that they accommodate. They also own KB Express with 8 locations, and will be opening one in St. George right by Desert Hills High School. If you're intrigued, that's what they're building. New season St. George Metro Treatment Center. Come on up, Stan. Welcome. New Season is a leading provider of quality care, successfully treating opioid dependence for over 30 years, which we all know is such a huge problem here in the state of Utah. They hope to create awareness of opioid addiction, prevention methods, and provide valuable resources to understand that addiction is a disease and treatment works. Welcome, Stan. Thank you. All right, Renita Parrish with Summit Sotheby's International Realty. Oh, she's got a fan club. Welcome, Renita. She's been in the real estate profession in Southern Utah since 2010, and a background and experience in architecture and design, sales and marketing that spans over 3 decades. Renita is confident in providing references from happily satisfied clients, countless wonderful stories of their home buying and selling experiences. Welcome, Renita. Thank you. All right, Monty with Rugged Construction. Come on up, Monty, hiding there in the back. Rugged Construction provides general contracting and construction management services for residential and small commercial. They service Washington County and the southern Utah area and specialize in building custom homes and anything from decks to handyman work, and provide small tractor excavation services. Thank you, Monty, and welcome. Site One Landscape Supply, did Ben make it? They're formerly known as John Deere. It's the largest and only national wholesale distributor of landscaping products in the United States and Canada. They have a selection of more than 90,000 products, including irrigation supplies, fertilizer and control products, nursery goods, hardscapes, landscape lighting, and much more. Monica with Southern Utah Podcast. Come on up. Monica is a former radio talk show host, producer, writer, and a former member of SAG-AFTRA. She produces several podcast shows, including Southern Utah Podcast, is an advocate for children and filmmakers, and aims to help the two groups foster one another in her new project, fundindies.org. I had to be really careful how I say that. She will be a moderator, thanks Carissa. She will be a moderator at Sundance Film Festival in January for the independent film industry. Welcome, Monica, thank you. Next up, we have the St. George Bicycle Collective. Judith, come on up, Judith, welcome. The St. George Bicycle Collective has been functioning as a volunteer-only initiative for 2 years, fixing donated bicycles for and with underprivileged populations, but they now have a location starting in October 2017, just this year. Their mission is to promote cycling as an effective and sustainable form of transportation, and they also strive to make bicycles accessible for all by providing options to earn a bike for people who cannot afford purchasing a bicycle. Way cool. Thank you. Thank you, Judith. The Green Door Boutique, Melanie. Come on up, Melanie. Did she leave? Oh, she's right here. Oh, I was like, she hasn't, sorry. I was like, she's here. I know she's here. The Green Door Boutique is located in a charming adobe brick home just off of Bluff Street. There you'll find rich history preserved and have a sweet shopping experience. From clothes to home decor, there is something for everyone, and you will leave with a gift wrap purchase in a place that feels like home to come back to. Welcome and thank you. Top Job Asphalt. I'm going to call Amanda up. Amanda. Thank you. Yes, there she is. I don't think Mark is here, so I'm going to call you up. Top Job Asphalt provides quality asphalt preservation services to commercial, residential, and municipal customers. At Top Job, their processes and procedures are focused on the safety of their employees, customers, and the public. They are licensed, bonded, and insured to cover all projects and have a dedicated safety officer on staff. Welcome and thank you, Amanda. And finally, Exfluence Marketing, Carrie. Come on up, Carrie. Also sitting in the back, welcome. Carrie has been in the corporate events and marketing industry for over 20 years and has worked with top clients that include Mountain America Credit Union, AT&T, T-Mobile, the Utah X Games, and many others. She's a graduate of University of Utah and owns Exfluence Marketing. There you go. And Exfluence Marketing, and works with clients on helping them to market the event. And she is currently the interim director of the George Street Fest. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Susie. Let's give them all another round of applause. Welcome, everyone. Okay, I need glasses. So we're ready to hear from who you came for, not for us. We're so thankful and excited to have Steve Starks with us today. Steve became president of Larry H. Miller Sports and Entertainment in March 2015. In this capacity, he's also the president of the NBA's Utah Jazz and is and Ryan's not excited at all. He is also the president, oh, I did that, and is responsible for the NBA's G League Salt Lake City Stars, MiLB's AAA Salt Lake Bees, Vivint Smart Home Arena, Megaplex Theatres, Fanzz Sports Stores, the Tour of Utah Professional Cycling Race, and the sports radio stations comprising the Zone Sports Network. Wonder what he does in his spare time. Wow. Since joining the organization in 2007, Starks has contributed in a variety of management roles. He was Executive Vice President of Larry H. Miller Management Corporation, where he was responsible for mergers and acquisitions, Total Care Auto, and Saxton Horne Communications. Prior to joining the LHM Group, Starks was the Managing Director of Utah Policy Partnership, a public-private venture created to improve operations of Utah state government. He also helped manage Governor-elect Jon Huntsman's transition team in 2004. Starks graduated from Weber State University with a bachelor's degree in 2003. He currently serves as vice chair of the Salt Lake Chamber Board of Governors and on the advisory board for Silicon Slopes. Steve and his wife reside in South Jordan, Utah, where their 3 daughters live. Please help me in welcoming Steve Starks.
Sorry for the long introduction there. It's good to be here. We flew down this morning from Salt Lake, and we were worried we were going to be late because they had to de-ice our plane. And so another reason why I'm an aspiring citizen of Washington County, never want to have to worry about de-icing of planes again. As was mentioned, my name's Steve Starks, and it's an honor to be here. I recognize that there's a lot of people contributing to the community here and along the Wasatch Front as well. And we're thankful for the support that you give the Utah Jazz, Megaplex Theatres, and the Larry Miller Group of companies. I just want to quickly introduce, we have a couple people here. Blake Anderson, who's the president of Megaplex Theatres. Blake, why don't you stand up? And Jessi Tate. Jessi Tate is the Southern Utah regional manager for Megaplex Theatres and a St. George longtime resident. And Jessi oversees all the theaters in St. George, Cedar City, and our one in Mesquite. But most impressively, he and his wife had triplets 3.5 years ago, and then just added another daughter 6 months ago. And so he's a good man. She's a good woman, a remarkable woman. Before I jump into some comments, I just want to say how much I love this part of the state. We've been coming down here as a family for a lot of years. When I was in high school, I would come down here. There's this annual voyage from the Wasatch Front that you know about in spring break. I was one of the kids that used to walk up and down St. George Boulevard. One year, we ended up sleeping on the baseball field at Dixie High School. No alcohol was involved, I promise, but we didn't have a place to stay. So this has been a great part of my life, and I always look forward in the spring to coming down and getting past the inversion and coming down off of the snow, and you just come out of Cedar City and you start to see the red rocks, and it's really one of the great places, I think, anywhere, but especially in our state, and so it's fun to be here. There was a time when, in 2004, I was helping manage a gubernatorial campaign for a gentleman named Nolan Karras, who was actually running against Jon Huntsman Jr. I ended up working for Governor-elect Huntsman, but we were flying down and had to speak to a group like this, and I was the campaign manager, and we were taking off, and the pilot said, we were in somebody's lone plane, and it was like a 7-seater or something like that. The pilot said, the winds are really bad in St. George, and this was the old airport. And so we're going to give it a shot, but we might have to land in Cedar City. Well, the only seat in the plane was to sit up there next to him. And I get motion sickness like crazy. And so we were flying down here, and we got to Cedar City, and the pilot said, they're telling me that the winds are too strong. We're going to have to land here. And knowing that we would miss the event, I said, can we just give it a shot? It's a terrible mistake. And so we gave it a shot, and he circled, and he just kept getting lower and lower until I thought we were going to hit the cliff, but he landed that plane on top of that plateau up there, and I got out and kissed the ground and was so thankful to be alive, and another great memory of St. George. Let me, if I could, just talk for a moment about Megaplex Theatres. We will have in excess of 9 million people visit our theaters this year, which is remarkable given that Larry started this business 16, 17 years ago, almost 18 years ago. And he never set out to be in the theater business. He was going to take some old property where Jordan High School in Sandy, Utah was, and decided, well, let's build a theater. And the story is told that somewhere through the construction process, Larry said, so how do we get films? In other words, he started building the theaters before there was even an understanding of how you get films and go through that process. And so Jordan Commons really has become one of the great theaters in America. Blake Anderson hosted some executives from Disney recently, a year or two ago, and one of the guys from Disney said, I just wanted to come in Jordan Commons because I've heard about it so much. And so from that theater, Blake was hired and a great management team was assembled, and we've continued to grow that business. And we have 3 theaters here. We have one in Cedar City, one in Mesquite. And it's really a fun part of our organization, especially for a business that was never intended. There was no strategy to, no analysis said, let's get into the movie business. It just kind of grew organically. And when Star Wars comes out here next week, Blake, how many do you think we'll have in the top 10?
I would guess 6 of our theaters will probably hit top 10 in the nation, not in attendance, but in revenue. And our ticket prices are so much lower that that's really fantastic.
So Blake said that we'll probably have 6 of the top 10 theaters in the country next week for the premiere of Star Wars. And that's based on revenue. And so that's remarkable because our movie prices are about half of what they are in Southern California and New York. And so people in Utah just love to go to movies, and we're thankful to have a great brand with Megaplex Theatres where people enjoy coming. And it's been something that there's just something about the experience of going to a movie with friends or family. And my daughters, I can think the first time they saw Frozen, I kind of rue the day because that song stuck in my head forever now. But you think about going, you remember where you were the first time you saw Star Wars. And so we pride ourselves in providing world-class experiences through film, and we want to bring people together to have great experiences. We take a lot of pride in that business, and it's something that continues to grow and that we're really excited about. And we're fortunate to have 3 great operations here in St. George. Now, I'll just say as an aside before I move on to talking about the Jazz. How many of you, raise your hand if you've been to the Main Street Theater in St. George here? Okay, how many of you have had popcorn at the Main Street Theater? Do you know the story about the popper? Jessi, come on. This is worth your time, and you're going to thank me for a long time hereafter. Come talk about the popper. Yes. I discovered the popper 6 months ago.
Well, Main Street's been around a long time. I think it was built originally in the 80s and then remodeled again in the 90s and again in 2000. That popper was acquired. It's an old Creeder popper that has been seasoned. It has been seasoned for many, many years, almost 20 years, and it is the best tasting popcorn. And our food and beverage manager came down last week and he said it's probably the best tasting popcorn we have in our whole company at the Main Street Cinema 6. It's amazing. I don't know what it is, but it's amazing. If you have a chance, go check out the popcorn at Main Street.
You're going to thank me, I promise. And so to reinforce that, Blake has brought vouchers for everybody to have a free popcorn. And so go to Main Street. We would prefer that you also buy a movie ticket, but if you just go for the popcorn, that's okay too. I think, right, Blake? It's not conditional? Okay.
No, not conditional.
Okay.
Stop in and get it.
All right. Well, I'd love to, if I could, talk a little bit about the Utah Jazz. And we have at least one fan here, obviously. And so before I do, it's kind of fun to talk about the Jazz now because there was a period for about 6 months where every time I would speak, I would be asked about Gordon Hayward. And now I'm asked about Donovan Mitchell. And so it's fun to be able to talk about Donovan Mitchell and the Utah Jazz and what's happening with the team this year. If you think about Utah, and there have been people that have done brand studies and surveys, if you go anywhere across the world and you say Utah, people are going to think, they're going to associate several phrases with that. They're going to think of the LDS Church, it's headquarters of Worldwide Church. They're going to think of our beautiful scenery, God's creations in southern Utah, our national parks. They're going to think about families. And somewhere on that list, and in certain parts of the world, they're going to mention Utah Jazz. If you're in Turkey and you bring up the Utah Jazz, they're going to ask about Mehmet Okur. If you're in China, where 3 million people watch jazz games from China every time we play, they're going to talk about Rudy Gobert. If you're in Paris, or if you're in Brazil, or if you're in Spain, where Ricky Rubio's from, you're going to hear about the Utah Jazz. And because of that, because it's one of the standards of our state that people think of, everybody that works for the Utah Jazz feels a strong sense of stewardship to be associated with that. Utah Jazz isn't simply a business. We recognize that it's Utah's team. And whether you are a BYU fan or a Utah fan or a Weber State fan or an SUU fan, by the way, Weber State did beat SUU last week in the playoffs. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, if you are of the LDS faith or not of the LDS faith, when you come to Utah and you go to the Vivint Smart Home Arena, you're a Jazz fan. And we pride ourselves on being one of the great gathering places in our state that brings people together of all backgrounds. And if you look at a Jazz game and you see our crowd, it's really fun to see the people and the diversity that it brings together. And so we feel a sense of stewardship. And so it was remarkable last year when the Miller family announced that they were placing the Utah Jazz and the Vivint Smart Home Arena into what's called a legacy trust to ensure that it would remain here in perpetuity. And so in a very real way, the Miller family gifted the Utah Jazz to our community. And if you look around the NBA and other professional sports leagues, you see how teams are moved and transferred. That's not going to happen with Utah Jazz. They are Utah's team. And so we feel a sense of stewardship with that to make sure that we leave it better than what we found it, and that we continue to make it a point of pride for everybody that is in our state and Jazz fans across the world. Nike they became the uniform provider this last off season. And so for 2 years, Nike really studied every team's brand. And they sent a team to Salt Lake and they studied our brand and they came back with some findings. It was interesting to hear what they said. They talked about Utah, the legacy of the Jazz being hard work. And so they said there's something about Utah Jazz, an industry that fits and resonates with the history of the state. They talked about teamwork. They talked about how it connects people. As I just mentioned, we bring people together. So they showed images of the railroad connecting Promontory Point in northern Utah. And they had all these historical images that still are represented in the Utah Jazz. But the key finding that they came out with, and they said, you are one of 2 or 3 teams in the NBA that don't simply represent a city. You represent a state. You're not Los Angeles, you're not Dallas, you're not Memphis, you're not Oklahoma City. You are Utah. And there's very few teams, like I mentioned, 2 or 3, that represent an entire state. And we love that because we believe that we represent a state. We represent a region. Southern Idaho, Wyoming, certainly Nevada are Jazz fans, which is fun to see. And so because of that, in the coming weeks and months, we're going to emphasize more and more that we represent a state. And we certainly want people, when they think of the Jazz, to think of our ski resorts and our beautiful mountains in the north, but we also increasingly want people to think about our red rocks, our national parks, and to think about Utah generally. For too long, Arizona's they've stolen red rocks, haven't they? Nationally, when people think of that, they think of Arizona. And so we want the Jazz to be a megaphone, to be able to talk about all of Utah and how the Jazz represent all the beautiful parts of our state, not just northern Utah. And so we're going to continue to emphasize that, which we think will be a good thing for St. George too, in Cedar City and this beautiful part of the state. If I could, let me mention briefly, we had a busy off season this year. The Miller family decided after a couple years of intense study and diligence to renovate the Vivint Smart Home Arena. At the time that the renovation began, believe it or not, we were the second oldest NBA arena. That's hard to believe for those of us that remember when it opened in '91 and when we hosted the All-Star game. And the arena it's an incredible building. All the consultants we brought in, architects, engineers, they all said it has really good bones. And the way that it was built, it's timeless in its design. The glass on the exterior is something that architects are adding to design elements now. The space that we have on that city block gives us a lot of options. The width of our concourses are great. So the building itself was really strong to begin with. That allowed us to explore doing a renovation versus doing a rebuild. And after studying that for about 12 months, it was concluded that we could spend roughly $115 million, and get 90% of what we would get if we spent $500 million. And with sports venues, you'll see a trend that in order to build a new stadium or arena, you need the taxpayers to come in and pay 50% of that. And the Miller family simply didn't want to go and ask for that. They didn't feel good about that. And so we made the decision to renovate the arena. And they made the decision to pay for it personally. We created a reimbursement, property tax incremental reimbursement. It's too complicated to get into. But 40% of the increase will come back to us over 25 years, but that's capped at $22 million, and that only is created as we generate increased property value. And so it's remarkable that they were willing to do that. We spent 12 months in design. We looked at best practices from across the league and across the world. We hired an architect that led the project to renovate the Madison Square Garden, a $1 billion project in Manhattan. They had done a lot of other renovation projects as well. And so they came through, and for 12 months we were in heavy design. And we analyzed every floor of the building, all 6 levels. And it went through a series of iterations. And at the end of that, we felt really great about the design and what it would mean. We wanted to preserve the history of the building, which is so special, but we wanted it to feel like a world-class, state-of-the-art new facility. And so just a few highlights about the arena. And by the way, how many of you have been there to see a jazz game or concert since it's been open? Okay, so maybe about a third of you. Every level was renovated. Wi-Fi was put into the arena. We live in an age where people want to be on their phones and watch a sporting event or a concert at the same time. Why? Because they want to take pictures of them and their friends and post it to Instagram. And so having Wi-Fi ability, and that's not a simple task. When you're talking 18,000 people in a building, all connected at Wi-Fi at the same time. So that was a major upgrade, and it's improved the fan experience. Replaced all 19,911 of the old green seats. Those were iconic green chairs, but now we have jazz blue cushion chairs. There's not a bad seat in the house. Every seat was replaced with those new chairs. One of the things that we studied and that we confirmed was that after wins and losses, the second most important factor in going to a sporting event is what? Not parking. That's like number 3, but that was a good guess. Food. It's your food experience. And so we went out and we found the best of local restaurants. So R&R Barbecue is now at the Vivint Smart Home Arena. Cubby's. Is there Cubby's down here? No, they'll be down here soon. They're tremendous. Maxwell's Pizzas, Hires Big H, Cut Bob, Chick-fil-A. I could go on and on with the restaurants, but people can eat in the arena now and eat somewhere else almost every night and not have to eat the same food if they didn't want to. So the food experience is really different. We added a 12,000 square foot atrium and grand entry onto the northeast corner of the arena. This was important for a few reasons. One is that we wanted to get our guests out of the element sooner. And we wanted to take the box office off of level 2 where you had to walk downstairs to get the will call and then walk back up to enter the building. We wanted to get that all on the main concourse level. So now our guests pour into the building through this grand atrium, and they have the box office to the right. They have a new team store to the left with a life-size Rudy Gobert mannequin in it. You now are out of the elements. You're in this beautiful area. We've added what we call the J note, which is the Jazz logo on the corner. After the game the other night, when Donovan Mitchell scored 41 points, there were people lined up after the game, December 1st, and they were lined up to take photos next to this lit-up J note statue, which is exactly what we hoped for. We wanted it to be like the love sign in Philadelphia, one of those iconic places where people come and take photos. And it was fun to see people hanging there just to get a picture after the game of that. Level 2 had our business offices in it. All of that was renovated. It's now club space. We now have the biggest club within the NBA, more square footage than any other NBA arena. We punched holes from level 2 directly to the lower bowl. There's 8 of them, so you can go from the club directly to your seats, which has changed the guest experience. We renovated our locker room campus. We believe it's the nicest and largest locker room campus in the NBA, which is important when you're recruiting and retaining free agents. I know I'm missing some things, but it was a busy off-season. In all, it was about $780,000 of construction a day for 129 straight days. And the project was done on time and on budget, and that speaks to Utah and the way that we come together and work. Oakland Construction led the project, but the team of subcontractors were incredible, and people felt like it was a project bigger than themselves, and so people worked together. We fed them lunch constantly. We had our food partners bring in lunch, and it was a really fun project. The last 60 days, there were 2 shifts, 18-hour days to get everything done, and it got done. So if you haven't been there, we would love to have you and hope you have a wonderful experience. The feedback we've heard has been really positive. Everything from it feels grown up, it feels metropolitan, it feels so luxurious. Whatever your description is, we'll take it, but we hope you have a great experience. And because it's a gathering place, we want you to come up. We've had a season ticket holder from St. George that's owned season tickets for 20 years. And he's come up to almost every game. He'll often drive or fly and stay for a few days if we have an extended homestand, just to continue to come up to Jazz games. And it's really fun to see that. So again, we'd love to have you there. Let me just talk a little bit, if I could, about what the strategy of the Utah Jazz is. Simply put, our strategy is to win an NBA championship. I want to say that again. Our strategy is to win an NBA championship. When I was asked to assume this role, I would say that, and sometimes there was a reaction where people would say, "Do you really believe that?" And I wouldn't be doing this job if I didn't believe to my core that we could win an NBA championship. And so everything from the renovation, everything in the way that we've built our front office staff, who we believe are extremely talented and some of the best in the league, to our coaching staff, to the type of players that we draft and develop, everything is aimed to winning an NBA championship. We're not doing this just because it's fun. And it is fun, and it is meaningful, but we want to hang a championship banner in the rafters. And as Dennis Lindsey, our general manager, says, he wants to see the day when a championship trophy is handed to Gail Miller. And what that would mean for our state is hard to put into words. And so we're dead focused on that. Along with that, we want to enrich the community. We know that there are a bunch of kids right now wearing number 45 jerseys, Donovan Mitchell's jersey. You can't find them in Fanzz stores. They're making them as fast as they can, who watched on TV or at the arena when a rookie scored 41 points the other night. There are a bunch of little kids that are enriched because of that. There are a bunch of people that came to that arena and will have an experience that they'll always remember now because of that. There are little kids like J.P. Gibson, who's one of our best Jazz fans, who has cancer, a 10-year-old boy, and loves the Utah Jazz. And so when we did a J.P. Gibson t-shirt night and we raised money for cancer for his recovery, that's enriching. And it made all of us better as we looked at JP and as we've gotten to know him. I can tell you stories about a guy who wrote a letter to us that said that he was offered tickets to a playoff game, and his dad was getting ready to pass away. When they showed up to the arena, they realized that they were the second row. His dad's lifelong dream had been to sit on the first or second row. They went to a game. The father passed away a month later, and the guy sent a picture of him and his dad at the game and said, "This will be a cherished memory." And so we feel that sense of stewardship to enrich the community, to bring people together. And we can do that whether we win or whether we lose, but it's better to do it when we win, and so that we don't see those two things as competing at all. And then the last thing is, and this comes from the Miller family, we want to be the best place in town to work and to do business. We want our season ticket holders and our sponsors to feel great value from their partnership with Utah Jazz. We want brands like America First Credit Union, who put their logo on our new atrium, to feel like that's the best money they spend and the best partner they have. We want Vivint Smart Home to be able to be proud because of that and help in their recruiting efforts as they go out. And so we take pride in being the best place in town to do business with, and we employ a lot of people, and we want to be great employers for them as well. I want to open it up to questions. I just wanted to share, maybe in conclusion, something I've learned in my career that might be helpful for you. I've been blessed to have great mentors throughout my career. Nolan Karras was one of those. Larry Miller was one of those who hired me and put me to work in my first job, which was just to follow him around. for about a year, and I just observed and watched and learned from him. Miller family continues to be that, and many others inside and outside of our company who are great mentors and people that I look up to. And one of the things that's consistent throughout all of these individuals' life is impeccable integrity. And the way in which they conduct themselves and their business dealings is beyond reproach. And I can share many stories with you about that I think will highlight it, but I'll just share maybe a couple. Nolan Karras ran for governor, as I mentioned, in 2004. He was the former Speaker of the House, a tremendous leader and citizen of the state of Utah, and I was privileged to be his campaign manager. One night we were southern Utah, and we drove back up, and it was snow on my windshield and ice, and I was grabbing my bags out of the back of the car, and before I could get to my car, Nolan was out at 2 a.m. scraping the ice off my windows. Here I was, 25 years old, and he's out taking care to do that. There was another occasion when we were in the primary against Jon Huntsman, and things are in political campaigns, and as you see that nationally now, things get ugly. And Nolan would never allow it to get ugly. And I was 25 years old and competitive, and we were at lunch one day, and I was frustrated. And I remember Nolan, and forgive the religious reference to this, but I believe it's applicable to anybody, whether they're religious or not. Nolan said, "Steve, you need to understand that I pray for my opponent, and I prayed for him today, because if he's elected, he's going to need God's wisdom to help guide him. And I want to always be able to support whoever's in office and help them accomplish what needs to be done." As a 25-year-old, that left an incredible impression about the perspective that we ought to have around politics and around the decisions that we make in our public and personal lives. Fast forward, I now have the opportunity to work with Larry Miller. And as I mentioned, I was hired just to observe. Larry wanted me to be what he would call special projects. And so I watched Larry do a lot of business transactions. And I was always amazed that he would call up the other party and he would say things like this: "Hey, I've read through the agreement. Have you read this section? Are you sure you're okay with that? I want to make sure you understand what you're agreeing to here." And every once in a while, Larry would say, "I don't think it's fair for you. Why don't we do this to make it more fair?" Because he always wanted to conduct himself so that if he did a business transaction and he crossed the street and saw that person 10 years down the road, he would have no discomfort looking at them. And he would be able to stand tall and feel really good about what he accomplished and what they accomplished through that transaction as well. That is total integrity. Not taking advantage of somebody else, even in situations he probably could have. Now, fast forward 5 years after his death, I'm doing mergers and acquisitions. We have an opportunity to acquire a dealership in Denver, Colorado. It was a very competitive process. There were many suitors that put in offers to purchase. In the final analysis, the seller, a great man who had owned the business for 20 years and cared deeply about his employees, made the decision to sell to the Larry Miller Group. When we went over to Colorado to announce the sale, the transaction to all his employees, we found out that day that he took 7 figures less to sell to us than what he could have sold to somebody else. And the reason why he did it is because he said, "I knew that I was going to stand up in front of all my employees, and I was going to have to tell them who I had sold to. And I wanted to be able to look them in the eyes and feel really good announcing that they had just been acquired, the dealership had just been acquired by the Larry Miller Group of companies." And so for him, that integrity was more important than 7 figures. And he said, "Because I knew Larry Miller 10 years ago, and I know that he's a man that stands by his word. And I know that you'll take care of your people. And that means more to me than that sum of money." And so Larry's integrity, even from the grave, was facilitating business transactions. To me, that is what we need more of now than ever. Personal integrity, moral leadership, and people who are willing to put others' needs above their own and to serve and do what is right. And it was an honor for me to observe those things. And so, in conclusion, on Megaplex Theatres, on our check stubs and our dealerships, you'll see the Larry Miller signature. That means a lot to us. That's not just a logo. That's a brand, and that's a promise. And we'll do tens of millions of transactions throughout our whole group of companies this year, and not every one of them will be done right, unfortunately. But that signature means that we're trying to get all of them right, and that both parties feel really good about that transaction. And that's the standard that we hold ourselves to, whether it's on the court or in the theaters or in our dealerships. And so with that, thank you, and I would love to answer any questions that you might have. And I can talk about some basketball stuff, but I'm not going to divulge any team secrets here.
I heard you mention that your one of the goals is to be a terrific place for people to work, and I'm kind of curious if you could share some of the things you guys do to make that happen.
Yeah, so I've got two really good partners here, and so I'm going to invite them to come up. Blake, why don't you come and answer that in real time, because Blake's been with the company for almost 11 years now. 12, almost 12 years. The question was, how do we make it a great place to work?
I can just tell you a few things, and I've had the opportunity to work for a lot of different companies in my career and across the country, and I have so enjoyed my tenure at the Larry Miller Group of companies. Let me just tell you a few things that we do. It's very important to the Miller family that all of us, not only us, but our children receive an education. And that's something that Larry never had the opportunity to do as a young man, and he would like to provide that for as many people as he can. So for all of our full-time employees, whether you be the nighttime janitor, a manager, an executive, all of our children have scholarships provided by the Miller family to attend any school of their choice in the state, and their college is paid for. So it's a very, very nice benefit. And there are many, many things like that the Miller family provides, not just to us as employees, but to the community. Coming up this next week, maybe week and a half, a very important thing for Larry when he was here was to have a Christmas celebration that the whole community could celebrate and be a part of. And Gail has done a very good job of continuing that, and their vision is to fill the Vivint Smart Home Arena with as many people as possible and sit side by side and sing Christmas carols together, and it's a wonderful event. And everyone who attends is given a small gift and is able just to sit together and sing and celebrate both our employees and the community. And I could go on and on. There's just many, many things, but it truly is one of the best places to work and one of the best opportunities that I've had, and I know many of our employees feel that way also.
Thanks, Blake. We also try to do a lot of training, and so people have opportunities to grow and learn areas outside of their original discipline. And the more that people understand about other departments or disciplines, the more prepared they're going to be to fulfill future leadership roles. Jessi participated in what we call the Larry Miller Sports and Entertainment Leadership Institute, and he had a chance to learn about finance and other things that he normally wouldn't have, and that's because we want Jessi to do great things in his career. And now he talks in terms of EBITDA and all sorts of financial metrics like that, which is fun to see. So, good question. There was one right behind you too.
So what's the pathway to a championship?
Pathway to a championship. So one of the things that we need to be world-class at is player development. And here's what I mean by that. Developing players and through the draft is the most efficient form of team building. And it's the most controllable form. You can't control whether a player is going to sign with you in free agency or not. And when they do, it's often more expensive. Now, look, we want to pursue great free agents, and we do. And that's one strategy that's important. But if we can develop our own players within our system, and if we can find players that have Jazz DNA, what Coach Schneider talks about Jazz DNA, then we feel like we can do that in a way that can elevate. So you draft Rudy Gobert with the 27th pick, and if you redraft his class, he's going to be probably the number 1 or number 2 pick. If you draft Rodney Hood in the 20s, you redraft, Rodney Hood's going to be much higher. Donovan Mitchell, we were able to get at 13. It's already said, we're 25 games in, and Donovan Mitchell is looking like he has enormous potential in this league. So we need to be world-class at player development. We need to retain our leadership. There's something about chemistry and continuity that's really important. It develops over time. So look at the Spurs. Popovich has been there a long time. There's a certain system that they've implemented. We believe that we have the beginnings of that. We need to keep that together and keep going. And then, honestly, you need to get lucky. You need to have good health. You need to have things fall in place to be able to do that. And so we're wise with our money. We signed a bunch of short-term contracts because we wanted to see how guys could develop and then have options to extend them. We believe we draft well. You're not going to get all of them right. And then we need to be able to find that one or two pieces that can get us over the top. So that's what keeps us all up at night thinking about. And fortunately, we're blessed to have Dennis Lindsey, who's a tremendous executive in the NBA. Good question. Other questions? Yes, sir.
In light of the current political turmoil with the NFL and things like that,
Yeah.
where does the Jazz stand with honoring flag and
Yeah.
situations like that?
Yeah, sports has become a social platform, and that's really emerged more in the last couple of years. It's probably always been there. And so we encourage our players to salute the flag. That was important. That's important to me personally. You watch our head coach, it's important to him. And we believe it's important for the community to see that. Now, what's interesting is we have the most international players in the NBA on our team. And so we have like half of our guys that don't salute the flag and others that choose not to right now. And it's not that they're protesting anything. It's just, for whatever reason, the culture in sports is that most players don't put their hand over their heart. And we encourage them to. We wish they did. We've had great dialogue with our team about the social issues at play here. And so when you think about Rodney Hood, who grew up in Mississippi, his life experience in America is totally different than what mine is or what yours is. And he's experienced things that are very real. And so he sees conversations taking place, and they apply to him perhaps more than they do other places. Or Derek Favors, who grew up outside of Atlanta. Or you take a guy like Rudy Gobert, who grew up in France, and he's going to have a different world perspective. And so we tried to foster dialogue. Where do people stand? How are we doing? How do we be part of a solution? And so what our players have chosen to do is to put their arms around each other as a brotherhood, and that way that they could all participate in that, knowing that half of them are international and wouldn't put their hand on their heart. And so they've chosen to do that as really a sign of unity and brotherhood as much as anything. And but we ask and we try to have a culture that is patriotic, that is community oriented, and that wants to be part of solutions. And so that's where we stand on it. Yes, ma'am.
In your renovations, did you find any problems from when the tornado hit years ago? I was in front of the Delta Center
Were you?
when that happened, and I just wondered if that affected your renovations.
No, it didn't. That was such an anomaly, as you know. The roof had to be replaced then. There was some damage that was repaired, but there was nothing structural or long-lasting that was impacted in the building because of that tornado. Thankfully. Yes, sir.
As a community, as business leaders, what can we do in St. George to bring more of the jazz to St. George? Or more of the middle?
Yeah, it's a great question. We would love, so I get hit up a lot on training camp. Could we bring training camp to St. George? And that would be really fun. Logistically, it's really challenging. The NBA's compressed the preseason schedule, and so just the transfer back and forth, that's something that we always want to explore. We have a G League team, which is the development, it's like a minor league team for the NBA, and it would be great to bring them and play at Dixie State as an example. But the requirements, the NBA requirements for those gyms, Dixie State would have, or we would have to invest a lot of money to get the gym to the NBA standards in terms of even the hoop and the stanchion and where it bolts to the ground and the security and all sorts of stuff like that. And so we would love to connect the Jazz more. I think that you'll start to see some things that do that naturally, where we want to highlight other parts of the state. But it's a good question, and it's something that we think about. I was on a plane, actually. This is interesting. I was on a plane from Salt Lake to San Diego. We were going to meet with a player who's no longer with us, who's no longer with us. And I was with, we were on the plane, and I think Rudy was there, Rudy Gobert was there, Rodney Hood was there, and I'm trying to remember who else was on the plane. But we were flying over, and I remember one of them was looking out the window at the geography and how dramatic it is. And I remember just looking at him, how intensely he was looking at it. And I was like, do you know where this is? And he's like, is this Vegas? And I was like, no, that's Zion National Park right there. And so we had this great conversation about the Red Rocks and Zion, and I was like, you got to bring your family down here. And Coach Snyder, I know for the last 2 years, I think they may have come to Zion last year. And so one of the things we need to do is just get people from the Wasatch Front that come to Salt Lake. They have no idea what's down here. And when they come down here, it's like, oh my goodness, why didn't you tell us sooner? We've been trying to. So we're working. Megaplex Theater, it's obviously St. George is a pillar in our theater chain now. And so we'll continue to explore every opportunity to grow down here. If you have ideas too, then we're always, we always listen. Some of the best ideas come that way. Yes, sir. Strong beard, by the way. Good beard today. I like that.
So I have a question for a personal friend of mine. I actually cut his hair when I lived in Laramie, home of the Pokes. And Josh Adams, is he on your radar?
Josh Adams?
He was the most valuable player from Mountain West. He beat Larry Nance's records, and Larry Nance is playing for the Lakers.
Yeah.
Gives a lecture. I didn't know if you guys. He's playing overseas right now.
Yeah. I don't know. I could ask. I bet you that he is in our database, because the scouting that takes place, we have a network of scouts all over the world, and so they probably scouted him in college, and then we have somebody watching him in Europe. I've not heard his name personally, but I don't get involved with you and me, and our state doesn't want me scouting players. Thankfully, we have a really talented group of people that do that, and so tell Josh he's on our radar. I just don't know where he is on our radar, okay? Yeah, thanks.
I know that, like you said, with Nike, for example, that they came into Utah, they told you, about the community, and I'm sure you guys had a lot of conversation with that, and I know a lot of that goes into the uniforms. So my question is, I know that we got a fourth uniform coming. What does that uniform have to do with our community? Because I know it's a community-based uniform, and if you can tell us about it.
Yeah. I can't tell you too much. We live in a social media world, and there are very few topics that are so social media driven as uniform changes, and you can't imagine the strong opinions. I mean, we have people that will, on their own accord, will design uniforms for us. And I'll get hit up on Twitter. It's like, hey, @Steven_Starks, check out this design. I think you got to do this next year. And then there's people that are mad because we don't have green this year and we have gold. And then there's people who love the gold. And it's really fun to see. And so I will say this. The fourth jersey that's coming out is called the City Edition. And that's what Nike has called that for all teams. It's the City Edition. And it will come out. Information about it will be released in the year 2017. And it will be born in 2018. And we think it represents something that's really cool. There's a writer for ESPN, a national writer who's very well known, who hit me up and said, because I think the NBA must have shown them all the city uniforms for all the teams, and he hit me up and said, I can't believe what you guys are doing. It's like phenomenal. And he said, so he's going to write a story about it. He highlighted ours. And then the city will actually rotate over time. And so you can show different elements. And so it'll be cool. How's that for a very general, exciting statement? So good.
It's easy to see on the court your strategic advantages. I'm curious about the business advantages. We hear a lot, small market, or you hear some of the cost. What do you see as the Jazz organization?
Yeah, good question. Ownership, the stability of our ownership can't be underestimated. And you think, well, how does that come into play? Agents know. and they talk about it all the time. The fact that we have the Miller family, who not only has owned the team for a long time, but puts tremendous financial resources into it. Players want to go where there's stability, and agents want players to go where there's stability, so that's a huge competitive advantage for us. We need to quit calling ourselves small market. And I'm talking to you too, all of us. We're the fastest growing state in the country. We have one of the top economies in the country. We have the youngest population in the country. Washington County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country. So you tell me, project out 5 years. Would you rather be in Salt Lake or fill in the blank? And I'm not going to say because I'll get in trouble. But let's just say Memphis or Oklahoma City or, right? Those are great cities. But to us, Salt Lake has a ton of competitive advantages. We have great universities. We have work-life balance. We have the most beautiful NBA city there is. We have a head coach that players want to play for. And people want to play for Quinn Snyder. We have a great front office. We have beautiful facilities. I could go on and on. We're at the Chamber of Commerce. I feel like I'm giving a Chamber of Commerce speech. But now, look, it's not for everybody, though. We don't have sand. We don't have great nightclub scene, right? There are things that other markets are going to have. Like, we're not Miami. And that's okay. Don't try to be something you're not. Miami's Miami. We're the Utah Jazz. And I can tell you that when Donovan Mitchell was drafted by our sister city on the other side of the Rocky Mountains, and he's crossing the stage, and then he sees on a screen that he's just been traded to Utah, he gives a fist pump because he was excited about coming to Utah. I think that story is getting out there. Okay, probably one. I'm wearing you guys out. These two. Go ahead.
Okay. How are you guys? I know you talked a little bit about the little boy who had cancer.
Yeah.
How else are you guys giving back?
Yeah. So one of the things that's really neat is that this year on the jerseys we have a jersey patch, and every team was told and asked to sell that by the NBA to an advertiser. And so when we started that process, we looked at the front of a jersey is really, if you look at the psychology of fandom, when you buy a jersey and you're willing to put that on, what does that mean? That means like you're affiliating with that. Like that is you. You're wearing the jersey. And so we wanted to be very careful about not just putting any logo on there. And so we set out some criteria and a strategy, and we found a company in Qualtrics. It was Utah-based. It's technology, which we liked. And then they came to us with an idea to say, rather than putting our company's logo on it, why don't we use it as our platform to raise money for cancer research, which is called Five for the Fight. And they presented that idea, and we loved it. So we're the only jersey patch in the NBA that has a philanthropic cause on our jersey. And we want it to be awareness for people that they can donate and raise money for cancer research. And we work closely with Huntsman Cancer. And so we're proud to be able to use the jersey as a platform to do good. And we have in arena signage and announcements about that too. So that's one way. And but there's other things. We try to be active in the community. We're going to the hospital next week. Children's Hospital are taking our players up there. Megaplex, they do incredible stuff in all their communities. Sock drives, things like that. So we try to be very good. And it makes us better as people. And it's good for business.
I just had a question about the conferencing. There's so much of a dominant side on the west side. There's a lot of talk of getting rid of East and Western Conference with the playoffs.
Yeah.
Do you feel that would help the Jazz, or do you feel like that's a good move for the NBA to combine the conferences and play?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you. I was on a call yesterday, and the league is really studying that, looking at it, and there's pros and cons. So the issue is, do you just reseed the playoffs 1 through 16? And so then, in theory, you can do it a couple different ways. You could take 8 from the East, 8 from the West, and then reseed them. Or you could just take the top 16 teams. And in that scenario, you might have 11 of those from the West and only 7 from the East. There's some advantages to that because you're getting the best teams in the playoffs. The disadvantage to that is that you have historical playoff rivalries that are really important. And the fact that there's something about having to beat the team in front of you in your division or conference that has made great players and great teams significant. Our playoff series with the Lakers historically have been really special. And when Stockton and Malone broke through and they beat Seattle for the first time, there's something about that. You break through, you fight through, you get past it. And so the Knicks and the Heat is another one. Jordan had to do this with the Pistons. Had to keep fighting. It was the Celtics and then the Pistons, and they got through it. and he won the NBA title. So there's pros and cons, and I think it's worth looking at. I'm glad the league is, but I don't know yet. I don't know yet what the best solution there is. And it's cyclical. You can look at data over 30 years, and right now the West is a stronger conference, although the East is playing really well. But over time, that's shifted, and so I don't know that we should be quick to react to a cyclical thing that's going to change over time. And a lot of your eyes are glazing because we're geeking out about NBA, very centric stuff. So I've worn you out. Thank you very much for your support, and good to be here.
Just to kind of take with you as a piece of our scenery here. So
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you. Are you kidding? Thank you very much. This was really great. Let's give him another round of applause. For Steve, Utah Jazz, Megaplex Theatres. We're really excited. Next time, I mean, we're really humbled that you took a plane in like this, but next time, maybe, come anyway. Yeah, what the heck, right? When it's your time, right? Anyway, give him another round of applause. Thank you very much. I would like to, a couple more just quick announcements. I'd like to thank Community Education Channel back there. They're always coming out to our lunches. They are filming it, so people that couldn't be here, there's something special. I think the integrity part in life and business is certainly something that everybody needs to hold on and take with them. But share that with people. You can go to youtube.com/community education channel to watch that, and that'll be coming out in our lunches. You can just click on it from our newsletter that we put out. And then the last thing is with Silicon Slopes, the St. George Area Chamber of Commerce is still collecting children's books at our office, and lunches. So when you come to our lunches or to the office, we're collecting books through the 15th for Coney, Coney Kids, Coins for Kids. There you go. So please drop by some books. Education is extremely important, and you can help out in a small way. Thank you all so very much for coming, and if I don't see you, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you.